For weeks, the pain in my joints was my companion every single day. At first, it was something mild, a small annoyance in my knees when I got out of bed in the morning. I thought it was just bad posture or maybe the cold weather of those days. But as time went by, the situation got worse. Walking through my own house turned into a little odyssey. Climbing stairs felt like scaling a mountain. Even tasks as simple as opening a jar or lifting a grocery bag became a real challenge. Nights were the worst. I went to bed hoping to rest and wake up renewed, but instead, I woke every few hours with that stabbing pain, as if my joints were screaming for help. I tried everything: creams, pain relievers, hot baths, and even remedies friends and family recommended. Some soothed me for a while, but by the next morning, the pain was always back. The frustration started to wear down my spirits. I felt limited, trapped in a body that seemed to age faster than I could accept. It was on one of those grey days when I had almost lost hope that I heard about a home ingredient. Something simple that had been sitting in my kitchen pantry for years, and that, they said, could naturally ease the pain. At first I was skeptical. How could something so common do what even medicines hadn't achieved? But I decided to try. After all, what did I have to lose? What happened in the following days surprised me so much that I'm here today to tell you about it. In this video, I'm going to share with you exactly what I used, how I prepared it, and what changes I noticed in my body after adding it to my daily routine. If you're also dealing with joint pain and feel like nothing works, stay with me until the end. This information might be just what you need. And before we continue, I'd love to get to know you a little better. How many years old are you, and from which country or city are you watching me? Leave it in the comments. I love to know where you're joining me from, how my joint pain started, and why it became unbearable. I remember perfectly the day I noticed the first pain. It was an ordinary morning. I got out of bed, as always, but when I put my right foot on the floor, I felt a sharp jab in my knee. At first, I thought it was just a passing discomfort. Maybe I had slept in a bad position, or maybe it was one of those pains that come and go for no apparent reason. I didn't think much of it, but days went by, and the discomfort not only failed to disappear, it started to intensify. What had been mild pain when walking turned into constant stiffness. When I tried to bend my knee, it felt as if I had a rusty screw inside the joint. Soon, the pain also spread to my ankles and hips, and the worst, my hands. I noticed that upon waking it was hard even to close my fingers or hold a cup of coffee. It was as if every joint in my body was suddenly aging. With the cold, everything got worse. The nights were torture. The pain grew more intense, deeper, as if it penetrated to the bone. I woke several times every dawn, searching for a less painful position, trying to rub my knees or place a pillow under my legs to relieve the pressure. But nothing seemed to work. I thought it might be an old injury from my youth. For years I worked in a warehouse lifting boxes, climbing stairs, moving non-stop. My body was strong in its time, but the years, those don't pass in vain. I also considered that it might be arthritis. My mother suffered from it in her old age, and I remembered seeing her rub her hands with oils and creams, struggling to move her fingers each morning. So I started looking for solutions. The first thing I did was visit my primary care doctor. They prescribed pain relievers, the kind that promise fast relief. And yes, for a couple of hours I felt the pain decrease a bit. But after a few hours, everything came back the same or even worse. I tried warm compresses, then ice. Then I tried physical therapy. They recommended some gentle exercises to strengthen the joints, but every attempt ended in more pain or in swelling that lasted for days. I also bought supposedly miraculous creams, some of those advertised on television or that were recommended to me at the pharmacy. I applied them hoping at least to calm that constant burning sensation a bit. But nothing, just a momentary coolness, and then the pain again. Over time, I started to avoid leaving the house. Walks in the park, which I had enjoyed so much before, became unthinkable. Even going shopping or climbing the stairs to the second floor of my house, turned into a challenge that exhausted me physically and emotionally. I was frustrated at not being able to do simple things, like bending down to pick something up from the floor, or simply taking a walk without feeling I was punishing my legs and hips. Despair began to affect me emotionally. I became more irritable. I slept poorly. I felt tired all day. And worst of all, I started to think that maybe this was simply part of getting older, that maybe this was my fate from now on, to live with pain. That's when I promised myself I couldn't give up, that I had to find something, anything, that would truly help me. And right at that moment, I heard about a home remedy, simple and surprisingly effective. But that, I'll tell you about in the next section. Everything changed on a Saturday afternoon. I remember sitting in my armchair, a blanket over my legs, and a hot water bottle on my knees. That day had dawned overcast, with that damp cold that seems to seep into your bones. I felt especially defeated. I hadn't left the house for weeks, and even getting up to make a cup of tea felt like an enormous effort. That's when I received an unexpected call. It was my cousin Clara. She lives in a small town where many of those old traditions are still kept. Those grandmother remedies that, over the years, seem to be forgotten in the cities. I told her how I felt. I spoke about my pain, my fatigue, and all the things I had already tried without success. She listened in silence, and then told me something I wasn't expecting. "You have to try ginger." At first, I didn't know what to say. I thought she was joking. Ginger? That root I sometimes used to flavor food or saw at the supermarket without paying much attention. How was it going to help me with joint pain? Clara insisted. She explained that in her town it's customary to prepare a special ginger infusion to treat bone and joint pain. According to her, many older people drank it daily and noticed a surprising improvement within a few weeks. It wasn't only about drinking it as tea, she also mentioned using it externally, like a kind of warm poultice directly on the painful areas. I won't lie. At first I was skeptical. I had already tried so many things without results. Why would this work? But there was something in her tone of voice, in the certainty with which she said it, that made me decide. That very afternoon I put on my coat, grabbed my keys, and went to the nearest store. I bought a good piece of fresh ginger. When I got home, I held it in my hands for a moment and wondered whether that simple root could really change anything in my life. That night, following Clara's directions, I prepared my first infusion. I peeled a piece of ginger, sliced it thinly, and put it to boil in water for about 10 minutes. The aroma that filled the kitchen was strong, spicy, but at the same time comforting. I served myself a cup, added a little honey to soften the taste, and drank it slowly, letting the warmth travel down my throat. But I didn't stop there. I also prepared a mixture with grated ginger, a little olive oil, and a pinch of turmeric, as Clara had suggested. I warmed it slightly and applied it carefully to my knees, massaging in circular motions. The warmth was immediate, a feeling of relief I wasn't expecting. That first night I slept better than I had in weeks. I'm not going to say the pain vanished at once, but for the first time, I felt real relief, as if at last I were giving my body something it actually needed. And that's how it all began, with a simple root I had ignored for years, and that now seemed to offer me new hope. How I discovered this home ingredient, emotional and realistic narration. After weeks of fighting the pain, I began to feel I had reached a limit. I no longer wanted to keep taking pills every day or spending money on creams that only offered momentary relief. Every night while trying to fall asleep, I wondered if there was something else, some solution that wouldn't poison my stomach or affect my liver like so many medications. That's how I began my search for natural remedies. I spent hours at the computer reading health forums, watching videos on the internet about traditional medicine, and even looking for old books that talked about medicinal plants. I wanted to understand, was there something in nature that could relieve my joints without side effects? One Sunday afternoon, while I was talking with my neighbor Julian, the subject came up. Julian is 78 years old and has always been the kind of person who prefers the natural over the chemical. I told him how I felt. I spoke about my pain, my frustration, my fatigue from going from doctor to doctor without a definitive solution. He listened in silence and then said, "Have you tried the remedies our grandmothers used? Sometimes the answer lies in the simplest things, and we have them right in front of our eyes without noticing." I was pensive. He told me that, years earlier, he had also suffered from joint pain in his hands and knees, that he reached a point where he couldn't open a bottle of water without feeling as if needles were being driven into his fingers. He told me that, in his case, a home remedy had changed his life. Hearing that, my curiosity awoke. "And what did you do?" I asked him. Julian smiled and said, "Look, I'm not going to tell you it was magic, but since I started using it, mornings stopped being torture. I get up more agile, and the pain isn't what it used to be." He recommended that I research. That same afternoon, I went back home and sat at the computer. I started watching videos by naturopathic doctors, specialists in traditional medicine. I even found a short documentary where they talked about foods with anti-inflammatory properties. The more I read, the more common threads I found. Forums for older people, testimonials on social networks, all singing the praises of an ingredient that, until then, I had only used in the kitchen for flavor. What surprised me was seeing that even some scientific studies mentioned its benefits. There was talk of its ability to reduce inflammation, of its calming effect on the joints, and of its power to improve blood circulation. But I must be honest, I also had doubts. Is this really going to work? I asked myself. I had tried so many things that it was hard to believe something so simple could make a difference. Even so, something pushed me to try it. Maybe it was hope, maybe desperation, or maybe the wisdom of the generations who came before us. And here comes the moment to tell you the ingredient I've been talking about for minutes, the one that was key for me to begin to regain my well-being. Ginger, that humble root, twisted in appearance, but with a power many underestimate. Proven benefits of this ingredient according to studies and others' experiences. After I started incorporating ginger into my daily routine, I not only noticed some changes in my body, I also felt the need to understand why it was working. What was it about this root, which seemed so simple, that was making my joints feel looser and less painful? So I set out to investigate. First, I found something that really caught my attention. For centuries, ginger has been used in different cultures to treat muscle and joint pain. In countries like India or China, it's part of traditional medicine. They use it in infusions, poultices, and even in massage oils. But what really gave me more confidence were some studies I read. For example, a group of researchers at a university in Denmark ran a trial with older people who suffered from osteoarthritis in their knees. For several weeks, they gave them small daily doses of ginger, and the results were surprising. Many of those people began to report less pain, greater ease in walking, and less morning stiffness. Another study, conducted by scientists in the United States, compared two groups of older adults with joint pain. One group took powdered ginger mixed with hot water for 3 weeks. The other group simply made no change to their diet. The result? The group that took ginger showed a significant decrease in the intensity of their pain, especially when doing movements like climbing stairs or getting up from a chair. And best of all, many of those participants said they didn't suffer significant side effects, something that doesn't always happen with conventional medicines. But beyond the studies, what really convinced me were the testimonies of real people like you and me. For example, Maria, a neighbor in my neighborhood, told me she had spent months applying a mixture of freshly grated ginger with a little olive oil to her knees before bed. She said that after a week of doing it, her nights changed completely. She no longer woke in the middle of the night because of the pain. Another case is Mr. Ernest, who is 75 years old. He chose to drink ginger infusions every morning, right before breakfast. He confessed that at first he didn't like the taste much, but as the days passed, he began to feel less inflammation in his hands. Now he says he can once again open jars without difficulty, and that he has even returned to enjoying his favorite hobby, gardening. What became clear to me after hearing so many experiences was that ginger is not a miracle cure. It's not that you take it once and overnight all the pain disappears. No, it's a process. But the important thing is that it's a natural process, without harsh chemicals, without dangerous side effects, just nature's help acting little by little in our bodies. In addition, I discovered that ginger contains substances called gingerols and shogols. Don't worry, I won't get technical. It's enough to know that these are responsible for its anti-inflammatory effect. They're like little natural soldiers that help reduce swelling in the joints and relieve pain. Now I understand why my neighbor Julian spoke with such certainty, and also why, after a few days of using it, I myself began to feel I could move my hands more easily, that stairs no longer seemed my worst enemy, and that at last, I could sleep through the night. How I prepared it, my step-by-step home recipe. Now that I've told you how I discovered ginger and why it can help people with joint pain so much, I want to share with you exactly how I prepared it and used it at home. Because I know many of you may be thinking, all right, but how do you make it? How much should I take? How often? So here it is, step by step, just as I did it. First, I'll tell you about the way I consumed it, as an infusion. Ginger infusion recipe for joint pain. What you need is very simple. 1 fresh ginger root, roughly the size of your thumb or a little larger. Half a liter of water, approximately 2 large glasses. 1 teaspoon of honey, optional, but it helps soften the taste. A few drops of lemon juice, optional, but very pleasant to the taste. The process is as follows. First, peel the ginger very carefully. You can do it with a little spoon or a small knife. You don't need to remove all the peel, just the thicker parts. Then slice the ginger into very thin rounds or grate it if you prefer a stronger flavor. I like to grate it because I feel it releases its properties better. Bring the half liter of water to a boil in a small pot. When the water starts to boil, add the ginger. Lower the heat a bit and let it simmer for about 8 to 10 minutes. That way you make sure the water absorbs all the beneficial compounds. After that time, turn off the heat, strain the infusion, and serve it in a cup. If the flavor seems too strong, you can add 1 teaspoon of honey and a few drops of lemon juice. Not only does it taste better, it also adds other anti-inflammatory and antioxidant benefits. How many times a day did I drink it? In my case, I started by drinking 1 cup in the morning and another in the afternoon, after meals. Some people prefer to drink only 1 a day at first to see how their body reacts. The important thing is to be consistent. It's not about taking it for only 1 day and expecting miracles. I noticed the first changes after about 5 or 6 days. External use, ginger compresses. In addition to the infusion, I also tried an external use recommended by my neighbor Maria. It's about making a kind of warm poultice or compress with ginger. Here's how I did it. I took a piece of fresh ginger, grated it, and put it inside a clean cotton cloth. Then I heated some water until it was very hot but not boiling. I submerged the cloth with the ginger in the hot water, wrung it out well, and placed it on the painful area. In my case, the knees. I stayed like that for about 15 minutes, letting the warmth and the natural oils of the ginger do their work. I repeated this once a day, especially at night before sleeping. The feeling of warmth and relief was very pleasant. Important safety tips. Before you run to the kitchen to prepare your infusion or compress, I want to give you some important warnings. Because although ginger is natural, not everyone can consume it without risks. If you have blood pressure problems, if you are taking anticoagulant medications, or if you suffer from stomach ulcers, it's essential that you consult your doctor first before you start taking it regularly. There are also people who are sensitive to its spicy flavor, or who may have stomach discomfort if they take too much. My advice is to start with a small dose, half a cup a day, for example, and see how you feel. If at any point you notice burning, digestive discomfort, or any strange symptom, stop using it and talk to a health professional. For external use, be careful if you have very sensitive skin. Ginger can cause redness or itching in some people. If that happens, simply remove the compress and rinse the area with cold water. And one last, very personal tip. Don't expect it to be a magic cure from 1 day to the next. But if you are consistent, and above all, if you accompany it with a balanced diet, some gentle physical movement, and good rest, you'll see how, little by little, your body thanks you. What the first week using this remedy was like. I remember perfectly how those first 7 days were after starting with ginger. I won't lie. At first I had a lot of doubts. After so many months of pain and trying things that didn't work, I wasn't expecting great results. But I decided to be consistent, and little by little, something began to change. Day 1 and 2. The first days were about adaptation. I drank my ginger infusion in the morning and in the afternoon, as I told you before. I also applied the warm compress to my knees at night. I didn't notice immediate relief, but I did feel a slight sense of warmth and relaxation after each application. That already gave me a bit of hope. Day 3. The big surprise came on the third day. I realized that during the morning when I got out of bed, the pain was a little less intense than usual. It wasn't a huge difference, but it was enough to notice it. Before, every time I put my feet on the floor, it felt as if I had needles stabbing into my knees. That day, the needles were still there, but smaller. It was the first time in a long time that I didn't start the morning in a bad mood because of the pain. Day 4. Midweek, my body began to give me signs that something was changing. In the afternoons, when I normally felt more stiffness and it was hard to walk from one room to another, that discomfort was less. It didn't disappear completely, but I was able to walk to the kitchen without stopping every few steps to rub my legs. That day, I even dared to step out into the yard for a while. I stood for about 15 minutes, looking at my plants. It had been months since I could stand that long without sitting because of the pain. Day 5. One of the things that bothered me most before was trying to sleep. I tossed and turned. It was hard to find a comfortable position, and I ended up waking several times during the night. But that 5th night, I slept almost straight through. When I opened my eyes in the morning, I was surprised how rested I felt. The improvement in sleep was one of the things that most motivated me to continue with the remedy, because we all know that when you sleep better, everything in life gets better. Day 6. This day was special. I dared to do something I had avoided for months. Go down the stairs without holding onto the walls or the railing. I did it slowly, of course, and very carefully. But I did it. It was a feeling of victory. That small achievement gave me back a confidence I had already lost. I felt that at last I was regaining a bit of control over my body. Day 7. At the end of the first week, I noticed several clear things. First, the pain was still there, but much more tolerable. It was no longer that stabbing pain that paralyzed me, but a milder discomfort, like a reminder that I needed to keep taking care of myself. Second, my mood had improved a lot. I got up with more energy, with a desire to move, to go out to the garden, to do small stretches. I even called a friend again to take a short walk around the block, something I hadn't done in months. Third, and perhaps most importantly, I regained hope. Because when you live with pain for so long, the worst part isn't just the physical discomfort. It's the feeling that nothing is going to get better. But after only 1 week, I already felt there was light at the end of the tunnel. I know that for some people results may take a little longer or be slower. But in my case, that first week was enough for me to realize that this natural remedy really was making a difference. Other things I changed to support pain relief. Now, I want to tell you something very important, because although ginger was the ingredient that marked the beginning of my improvement, as days went by, I realized something. I couldn't depend only on an infusion or a compress. If I wanted lasting results, I had to make changes in my day-to-day life. And to be honest, at first it was hard. It's not easy to change habits after so many years, but pain taught me that sometimes there is no other choice. First, I changed my diet. I began to read about foods with anti-inflammatory properties. I realized that what we eat every day also greatly influences how our body feels. So little by little, I started including things like fresh fruits and vegetables, especially those with intense colors like spinach, broccoli, carrots, and peppers. Fish rich in omega-3, such as salmon or sardines, which are excellent for the joints. Nuts, like walnuts and almonds, but always in small amounts. And of course, I kept drinking my ginger infusion, but this time alongside other healthy foods. I also reduced foods that worsen inflammation, like fried foods, cured meats, and refined flours. I know it's hard, because we all like tasty things, but believe me, the change is felt in the body. Second, I began doing gentle stretches. I know that when you're in pain, the last thing you want is to move, but I discovered that movement, when it's gentle and controlled, can be a great ally. Every morning before starting the day, I take 5 or 10 minutes to do simple movements. Stretch my legs while sitting, make circles with my ankles and knees, move my shoulders gently forward and back, and above all, walk a little inside the house, even if it's just from one room to another. These small exercises help me keep circulation active and prevent my joints from getting stiff. You don't need to go to a gym or make great efforts. Just move a little more each day. Third, I improved the way I rest. Before, I went to bed at any hour and slept in uncomfortable positions. That only made the pain worse. So I started being more disciplined about my sleep schedule. I made sure to go to bed at the same time every night. Sleep on a mattress that is firm but comfortable. Place a pillow between my legs when I slept on my side to relieve pressure on my knees. Avoid television or the cell phone before sleeping, because that made me more anxious and it was harder to fall asleep. I also learned to take pause moments during the day. If I felt the pain increase, I didn't force myself to keep going. I sat down, took deep breaths, and then continued. Fourth, the combination made the difference. As weeks went by, I began to notice it wasn't only the ginger that was helping me. It was the sum of everything: eating better, moving more, resting better, and of course, being consistent with the home remedy. My body began to respond, and my spirits too. I felt stronger, more positive, more eager to keep fighting for my well-being. That's why, if you are also going through similar pain, my best advice is this: don't look for a magic solution. There isn't a single thing that makes the pain disappear from one day to the next. It's the set of small changes added day after day that really makes the difference. Precautions and mistakes you should avoid if you want to try it. Now that I've told you all the good this home remedy has brought me, I want to be completely honest with you. Because although ginger helped me a lot, I also learned that not everything is as simple as it seems. And if you're thinking of trying it, there are several precautions I think you should know. Because the last thing I want is for you to make the same mistakes I made at the beginning. First, do not exceed the dose. When I began to notice the first relief, I got excited. And as often happens, I thought, if a little does me good, much more will do me better. Big mistake. The first day I increased the amount of ginger in my infusion, I ended up with stomach pain and a burning sensation in my throat that lasted for hours. Ginger is potent. It has many good properties, but in excess, it can irritate the stomach, cause heartburn, or even dizziness in some people. So my advice is clear: stick to the recommended amount. Taking more won't make the pain disappear faster. The key is consistency, not excess. Second, do not abandon your medication without consulting your doctor. This point is very important. I know that when something natural starts to work, you fill with hope, and maybe you'll be like me and start thinking, well, if ginger is helping me, why keep taking my pills? But luckily, before doing anything rash, I spoke with my doctor. And it was the best decision, because there are medications you can't stop taking all at once. In addition, ginger, although natural, can interact with certain drugs such as anticoagulants or medications for blood pressure. So please, before changing or suspending any treatment, always talk to your trusted doctor. They will know how to combine both safely. Third, possible side effects if it's not used properly. Although it's rare, some people may be allergic to ginger. It can also cause nausea, gas, or discomfort if taken in excess or on very sensitive stomachs. Another mistake I made at the beginning was taking it on an empty stomach. I don't recommend it. It's better to do it after a light meal to avoid it sitting badly with you. If at any time you notice unusual reactions, rashes, difficulty breathing, severe dizziness, or any symptom outside the norm, the best thing is to stop the remedy immediately and consult a professional. Fourth, what to do if after a week you don't notice results? Here I want to be very realistic with you. Every body is different. What helped me in 5 or 6 days may take a little longer in another person. But if after a full week of consistent use, you notice no improvement at all, my recommendation is that you check 2 things. 1, are you following the preparation and amounts properly? And 2, is it possible that your pain has another, more complex cause that requires medical treatment? Remember that ginger helps a lot in cases of mild to moderate inflammation. But if your pain comes from a more serious injury, a cartilage problem, or something deeper, then you may need a different kind of care. Fifth, the difference between consistency and obsession. I tell you this with great affection. I know what it is to be desperate for relief. I know what it is to wake up every morning asking yourself, will it hurt less today? Will I finally be able to walk better today? But I also learned that obsessing only generates more anxiety, and that in many cases makes the pain worse. Don't spend the day taking home remedies. Don't get up every morning thinking only about the pain. Do your part. Follow the recipe. Be consistent. Take care of your diet. Move a little. And then let your body do the rest. Patience is a fundamental part of the recovery process. So, if you decide to try this remedy, do it responsibly. Listen to your body, stay calm, and don't forget that health is an everyday effort. Other popular home remedies that might help you too. Before finishing this video, I want to take the opportunity to tell you something I discovered during my search for relief. While researching ginger, I came across other home remedies that many people use to fight joint pain. Some were even recommended by friends, neighbors, or people who wrote to me on social networks when I shared my experience. So, although I chose ginger for the reasons I already told you, I don't want to fail to mention other options that might work just as well or even better for you. Because every body is a world, and what works well for one might not be ideal for another. Let me tell you about the 3 most popular. First, turmeric. Turmeric is a root with an intense yellow color, widely used in Indian cooking, but also famous in traditional medicine for its anti-inflammatory properties. Its star component is called curcumin, and according to several studies, it has effects similar to some anti-inflammatory medications, but naturally. Some people take it in capsules, but others prefer it as a powder, mixed in milk or infusions. There are even those who combine it with black pepper to improve its absorption. The main difference between turmeric and ginger is that turmeric focuses more on reducing inflammation internally. It's ideal if your joint pain is caused by chronic inflammation, like arthritis. Second, horsetail infusion. This is a very popular remedy among older people, especially in rural areas. Horsetail is a plant that helps eliminate fluids, but it also contains minerals like silicon, which they say helps strengthen bones, cartilage, and connective tissues. Those who have tried it tell me they notice less swelling in their legs, less stiffness in their joints, and in general, improved mobility. Unlike ginger, which is more anti-inflammatory, horsetail is more diuretic and remineralizing. That's why many people use it as a complement, especially if they have fluid retention or swelling. Third, olive oil with lemon. This is a simpler remedy, but it has its faithful followers. Some people take, on an empty stomach, 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil mixed with a few drops of lemon. They say it helps lubricate the joints and reduce inflammation thanks to the antioxidants in the oil. It doesn't have as quick an effect as ginger, but many people who take it consistently say they feel less stiffness over the weeks. In addition, it's easy to prepare, inexpensive, and provides healthy fats that benefit the heart. My personal recommendation: after everything I've tried, my advice is very simple. Listen to your body. What worked for me was ginger. But perhaps for you, turmeric, horsetail, or even a combination of several remedies will be better. That said, what I don't recommend is trying them all at the same time. Start with one. Give it 1 or 2 weeks. Observe how your body reacts. And if you don't see changes, then try another. Remember that every organism is different, and the important thing is to find the remedy that makes you feel better. Today, looking back, it seems incredible to think of the journey I've taken since those days when joint pain controlled every aspect of my life. I remember perfectly those mornings when it was hard even to get out of bed, the sleepless nights, tossing and turning because I couldn't find a comfortable position, the frustration of wanting to go for a walk or simply open a jar in the kitchen, and feeling how that stabbing pain stopped me. I spent weeks trying everything: pain relievers, creams, warm compresses, physical therapy, and although at times I felt small relief, the truth is that nothing seemed to give me a lasting solution. Until one day, almost by chance, that conversation appeared that changed my life. That recommendation about a home ingredient I had always had in my kitchen, but never imagined could help me in that way. I won't lie. At first I tried it with doubts, even with a bit of skepticism. But little by little, day after day, I began to notice changes. The pain began to yield, the stiffness diminished, and most importantly, I regained that sense of control over my own body. I walked more freely again. I could sleep better. And I went back to doing things as simple but as important as opening a jar without fear of pain. But beyond the ingredient, what really made the difference was my decision not to give up, to search, to try, to listen to my body and give it what it needed. Today, I want you to hold on to this message. There is hope. There are ways to feel better. You can regain part of that quality of life you thought you'd lost. And no, not everything is solved from one day to the next. It requires patience, consistency, and above all, trust that your body, with the right help, can begin to heal. If you're going through something similar, I encourage you to take that first step. Try this remedy, or the one you feel might help you. Listen to your body, and if you can, complement it with good nutrition, some movement, and a lot of kindness toward yourself. Before I finish, I'd love for you to answer something. Have you tried any home remedy for joint pain? Tell me in the comments which one has worked for you, or which one you'd like to try after watching this video. And while we're at it, tell me how many years old you are, and from which place in the world you're watching me. I love to know where you're joining me from, and the stories you have to share. Truly, thank you for being here, for listening, for being part of this little community where every day we try to find ways to live better. If this video helped you or inspired you in any way, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss upcoming videos. I'm sending you a big hug. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you very soon in the next video.